Good evening. Welcome back to Near Post Flick On. Yes, it's official. Chelsea are back in the Champions League. They are back in the Champions League after defeating Nottingham Forest 1-0, thanks to a goal from Colwill in the 50th minute. I think Chelsea supporters are going to be extremely happy to be back in the competition because, of course, Chelsea have got a very long history in the Champions League, having won it twice in their club's history. So it's going to be fantastic for them to be back in Europe and playing football on a Tuesday and a Wednesday night as opposed to a conference a league. So it's a massive step for Maresca. He's done very well to get them back in the Champions League. Commiserations to Nottingham Forest. I was rooting for them. I did want them to qualify for the Champions League, but at the end of the day, you can only blame yourself. The players can only blame themselves because at one point, Nottingham Forest, where I think they were third, and they were coasting. They were third, so I don't know what they've done. I don't know what's gone on, and they've just kind of let themselves down. The players have let themselves down, and I just feel for the fans. I feel for the Nottingham Forest fans because they were so close. Remember at the start of the season, people thought Nottingham Forest were going to get relegated. So they've had a phenomenal season. I think Nuno has done extremely well. If anything, you could say that they've overachieved with the squad of players that they've got at their disposal. You can argue that they have definitely overachieved this season. But I was just, oh man, it's unfortunate. I really wanted to see Nottingham Forest in the Champions League, but it wasn't meant to be. I think Chelsea deserve credit for getting back into the Champions League because sometimes when you are on a downward spiral, it's always difficult to kind of turn things around. But they've stayed with it. They haven't capitulated like your Tottenhams and your Man Uniteds who have just taken a nosedive this season. But of course, Tottenham did win the Europa League, but that's another conversation. But for Chelsea, I think they did deserve. Their players stayed with it. They stayed with it. They hung on, and they've managed to achieve something at the end of the season. So the players have turned it around. Um, they've had a relatively young side, to be fair. And that young side today, in today's game, they showed a lot of maturity and they were focused and they were determined to get the job done. And mind you, Chelsea were away at Nottingham Forest. So Nottingham Forest did have the home advantage and they had everything in their pocket to make it count. But they didn't. They didn't. That isn't to say that they didn't create chances because they did. Wood had a couple of decent chances, and on a good day he would have tucked them away. He would have tucked them away, but it just wasn't to be today. And it's gutting, It's a massive disappointment for the Nottingham Forest fans. It's a massive disappointment. As I say, I would have loved to have seen them in the Champions League. But however, they are still in a European competition next season. So they may even win that. You never know. But as I say, they've achieved beyond expectations this season. So, don't be too disheartened, Nottingham Forest fans. You be proud of your players, but as I said, they did have it within their capabilities. That it was in their hands. It was in their hands. They were third at one point. They were coasting. But that's the Premier League for you. You have a couple of bad runs, and everything can change. But even going into today's game against Chelsea, they could have still applied themselves. They could have gone gung ho. They could have thrown everything and the kitchen sink at Chelsea to try and get that victory, especially with the home support. But it just wasn't meant to be. And Chelsea will be elated. They will be absolutely delighted for qualifying for the Champions League. Of course, Chelsea have got a chance to win the Conference League, and I expect them to win that trophy on when I'm not sure whether it's a Wednesday or Thursday that they're playing, but I would expect Chelsea to win that. And if they do win that, then they can turn back and reflect on the season and say, you know what, we've actually had a fairly decent season this year. But a team of Chelsea's caliber, you'll always expect them to compete for the top honours. So I am saying, congratulations to Chelsea. Welcome back to the Champions League. But, they will be in for a rude awakening because they've got a very young set of players, a very young squad, and they will need to up their game. Maresca will need to work some magic. The likes of Cole Palmer will need to step up to the plate because the Champions League is a different ball game entirely. So, well, they know all about the Champions League. They've won it twice. So, but it's a different ball game entirely, and they'll need to bring their A game if they're to compete with the rest of Europe in the greatest club competition there is in the world. So they'll need to bring their A game. But the moment does belong to Chelsea. They've done it. They've gotten over the line. They are in the Champions League for next year. So congratulations to Chelsea. We look forward to seeing them back in it and back in the competition and seeing how they get on. Good luck for Wednesday or Thursday. I can't see Chelsea losing that, to be honest. If they lose that, it'll be a massive disappointment, but I can't see them losing that. I'm sure there's going to be a massive parade down at Chelsea in West London at some point next week. So all the best to Chelsea. We look forward to seeing that game as well. So yeah, thank you very much. Have a nice evening, people, and please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.